Okay, so we are in Parshas Behaaloscha. That's on page 775 in the Article Stone Chumash. It is Bamidbar, chapter 8. Parak Ches. Again, page 775 in the Article Stone Chumash. It begins with the mitzvah of lighting the menorah. Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, "Speak to Aaron and say to him, when you kindle the lamps towards the face of the menorah shall the 7 lamps cast light." They all cast light towards the middle. Aaron did so towards the face of the menorah. He kindled its lamps as Hashem had commanded Moshe. And then it continues in verse 4. This is the workmanship of the menorah, hammered out gold from its base to its flower. It is hammered out according to the vision that Hashem showed Moshe. So did he make the menorah. So there are 2 questions here that they ask, like, where did this come from? Like, well, where do we get the menorah? Like, we understand we're talking about we just got done the end of Parshas Naso with the offerings of the Nesiim, of the leaders of the Jewish people. The leaders of each tribe, where they brought every leader brought an identical offering, and which was it's called the Chanukas HaMizbeach. It's the inauguration of the altar. These were like the first offerings that were brought by the tzibur, by the community. But so, like, how did we get from there to the menorah? So the Medrash says, Rashi quotes the Medrash, that if you look at the Nasim of the leaders of the tribes who brought them, there are always 12 tribes. The Ramban comments on this, that whenever you see like a count of the tribes or all the tribes doing something, there are always 12 tribes, but who those tribes are could vary. And meaning that sometimes you include Levi and you exclude and they join together Ephraim and Manasseh into one, into Yosef. But where Ephraim and Manasseh are separate, one of them is missing. Usually that's Levi. And with the offerings of the Nesiim, of the leaders, Levi was missing. And Ephraim and Manasseh each brought separate. Each of their leaders brought separately. So Levi was missing. Levi, the tribe of Levi, did not bring. And for that reason, Aaron was disturbed. And like we said last week, is that they didn't like get together, have a meeting, and decide what they were going to do. They each were individually inspired to bring this offering, and they brought an identical offering. So Aaron, though, did not have that inspiration. He did not have that feeling, the leader of the tribe of Levi. So he was disturbed by this. And he said, maybe there's something lacking with me or with our tribe, that we didn't have this feeling to bring it. And to that, Hashem told Moshe to tell him that your portion, what you're doing, is greater than what they're doing, because you're going to light the menorah. Yeah.
Which one
was that?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What was that?
Tribe that was headed up by women.
Headed up.
Daughters not being given.
Oh, those were the Bnot Tzlach and the daughters of Tzlach. But what tribe were they from? I think from Ephraim, but it's very possible I'm wrong. That is in Parshas Pinchas. Hopefully I can find it. Manasseh.
Manasseh.
Okay. Yeah, it was Manasseh. Yeah, just like a some of Manasseh. Yeah, I know it was from Yosef, but yeah, so that was from Manasseh. But that was just because there was nobody other than them to inherit their father. The father didn't have any sons. Right. But what? Okay. So but so anyway, Aaron was disturbed that the tribe of Levi, that the leader of the tribe of Levi himself, wasn't inspired to bring an offering. Wasn't inspired to bring an offering to inaugurate the altar. And so he was disturbed. And Hashem said that your portion, what you're doing, is greater than what they're doing, because you're going to light the menorah. And that's how this Parsha is introduced. That Aaron, this is what you're going to do. You're going to light the menorah. So what's the significance of the menorah? So I say to say that the menorah represents the light of Torah, that the light of the menorah is the light of Torah shining forth to the world. And the Torah that's taught by the tribe of Levi was greater than any of these offerings that were brought by the Nesiim. But the Ramban says, and I think this is a Medrash, but the Ramban says that this is actually the whole idea of the Medrash is a reference to the Maccabees. That the menorah here is describing the menorah in the tabernacle, but it's actually a reference to the menorah that that we light on Hanukkah, that's inspired by the actions of the Maccabees, who were the in the Hanukkah story, to be clear, not the ones who live here, but those Maccabees were Kohanim. And what Moshe was, what Hashem was, the message that was being sent to Aaron is that these Nisim, they brought an inauguration offering for the altar, which will not last that long. We had it lasted centuries, maybe close to 1,000 years if you add it up altogether, between all the various Mishkans, the tabernacles, plus the first, it's more than 1,000 years. The tabernacles plus the first temple plus the second temple, it's more than 1,000 years, but we haven't had offerings for 2,000 years already, or thereabouts. So the menorah has been ever since, but the menorah we've been lighting for our entire history. Ever since the miracle of the Chashmonaim, well, we lit the menorah every day in the tabernacle and in the Beis Hamikdash in the temple, but also ever since the Hanukkah miracle, we've been lighting, inspired by the Kohanim from the tribe of Levi, we've been lighting the menorah, and that was the message to Aaron, that your portion is greater than their portion, that they're inaugurating the altar, which is something that only lasts as long as we have a Mishkan, we have a tabernacle, we have a temple, but the menorah will last throughout our history. Okay, another thing they comment here is that it says the how to light the menorah, which we understand basically what it's doing here, because we're talking about the inauguration of the Beis Hamikdash, of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, and so he's just starting to do the services in the tabernacle now. He has to know what to do. But why does it say in verse 4, this is the workmanship of the menorah? Why is that relevant to our discussion? That the how the vessels were made was described way back in Shemos in Parshas Truma. So why are we saying how the menorah was made here? It doesn't say every time that someone brings an offering, this is the workmanship of the Mizbeach, of the altar. That the workmanship is in one place, how to build it is in one place, and what to do with it is in somewhere else. So I think it's Reb Shimon Schwab answers, and this is a reference to the Haftorah, that it says in verse 3, Aaron did so towards the face of the menorah, he kindles its lamp, as Hashem had commanded Moshe. And in verse 4, what does it mean as Hashem has commanded Moshe? Its workmanship was, according to the vision that Hashem showed Moshe, so did he make the menorah. What was this vision that Hashem showed Moshe? So it says, the Medrash says that Moshe didn't understand, after being described, how the menorah was to be made, and Hashem showed him a vision and fire of the menorah. And Rav Shimon Schwab says that, and if you look in the Haftorah, this is on page 1182, it starts. Page 1182 in the Stone Chumash, 1182, it's in Zechariah, beginning chapter 2, verse 14. So that's where it starts. If you look on page 1183, though, chapter 4, it says, the angel who spoke with me returned and woke me as a man is awakened from his sleep. This is Zechariah, the prophet Zechariah talking. He said to me, what do you see? I said, I see, and behold, there is a menorah made entirely of gold with its bowl on top, and its 7 lamps are upon it, and there are 7 tubes to each of the lamps that are on its top. And 2 olive trees near it, one to the right of the bowl and one to its left. And I spoke and said to the angel that was speaking to me, saying, what are these, my Lord? The angel was speaking to me, spoke up and said to me, do you know not what they are? Do you not know what they are? I said, no, my Lord. And turning the page, he spoke and said to me, saying, this is the word of Hashem to Zerubbabel, who was the descendant of the Davidic lineage, the kings of the Jewish people, and the leader of the Jews who returned to the land of Israel after the Babylonian Persian exile, saying, not through armies and not through might, but through my spirit, says Hashem, master of legions. Who are you, a great mountain before Zerubbabel? You shall become a plain. He shall bring forth the main stone to shouts of beauty, beauty to it. That Zerubbabel, saying no obstacle will be too much to overcome. And our sages explain this prophecy is that the menorah was, it had 7 lamps, meaning it was a 7-branch menorah, and it was lit with 7 lights. And there were 2 olive trees, one on each side, with tubes leaning from those trees, leading to the cups in which they were lit, meaning it was self-filling, that the olive trees were filled up. They had pipes that the olives dripped into. The oil from the olives dripped into these pipes and filled up the cups of the menorah, and it was like a perpetual motion machine. It was constantly lit automatically. And that the message was that you don't need to do anything. Hashem will take care of all your needs. Everything that you need will be taken care of by Hashem.
The second paragraph.
Yeah.
In footnote.
Yeah. You're back in Behaaloscha?
775.
Okay.
Moses threw the tablet of gold
Right.
to the fire, and the finished menorah emerged miraculously. It's saying that there's the first time that the fire created something. And remember, the fire also created the horse.
The cow, right.
Cow.
Right. The golden calf, right.
Time.
Yeah, and this was afterwards, right? This was actually later. Yeah, this was actually later. So okay, but so where was I going with this? That's correct. But so the commentaries say that what was this vision that Moshe saw of the menorah? He's saying he saw and what was this vision of Zechariah seeing the menorah? So we've spoken about this before, that corresponding to the Beis Hamikdash, the tabernacle, the temple, the holy temple, it's a physical structure, but there's a spiritual structure that corresponds to it. That there's a spiritual version in heaven of the tabernacle. And that's what they were seeing. They were seeing the spiritual version. That's what Moshe saw. And in order to understand how to build it, he saw a spiritual manifestation of the physical structure. And that's what Zechariah saw. Zechariah was shown, the prophet Zechariah that we just read, he was shown the spiritual temple with the menorah that it contained. And that menorah was lit. So when it says that Moshe made the menorah, where are we? That he kindled this lamp as Hashem commanded Moshe, according to the vision that Hashem showed Moshe, so did he make the menorah. That means that a part of the construction was that it was lit. Meaning the construction wasn't really finished until the menorah was actually lit. So that's why here, when Aaron's commanded to actually light the menorah, to kindle the menorah, so that completes the construction. So that's why we're going over it again. Okay, so now now the next part of the Parsha, on verse 5 on page 775, we have Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, take the Levites from among the children of Israel and purify them. So now we've inaugurated the Kohanim already, we've inaugurated the tabernacle, now we're inaugurating the Leviim to sanctify them for the service that they do for the Jewish people. So in verse 7, so shall you do, to purify them, sprinkle upon them waters of purification, and let them pass a razor over their entire flesh. They have to shave all their hair on their heads and their bodies, and let them immerse their garments, and they shall become pure. They shall take a young bull, they bring an offering. And then in verse 9, you shall bring the Levites before the tent of meeting, you shall gather together the entire assembly of the children of Israel. And what do? You shall bring, on page 777, verse 10, you shall bring the Levites before Hashem, and the children of Israel shall lean their hands upon the Levites. And so all the Jewish people would around the Leviim and put out their hands to, like, in a sense, the same way we'd put our hands, give smicha, we'd put our hands on an offering, they'd put their hands on the Leviim. And Aaron shall wave the Levites as a wave service before Hashem for the children of Israel. So this is a miraculous event that Aaron picked up this day. Every Levi, he picked them up and waved them around. That means like we wave a lulav. You like right, left, every direction, cardinal direction. He would wave around the Leviim. Yes. So thousands of Leviim. Okay. Yeah. So that it continues. Then they bring the offerings. Okay. So, and in verse 15, thereafter the Levites shall come to serve in the tent of meeting. You shall purify them. You shall wave them as a wave service for they're presented to me. Okay. And they're taken in exchange of the firstborns. Okay. And now in verse 23, we have their apprenticeship and responsibility. Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, this shall apply to the Levites. From 25 years of age and up, you shall join the legion of the service in the tent of meeting. And from 50 years of age, he shall withdraw from the legion of work and no longer work. He shall minister with his brethren in the tent of meeting to safeguard the charge. That means that he doesn't do the heavy lifting. He's not like carrying the material of the tabernacle, but he could open the gates or take part in the singing and things of that nature. But if you notice in the margin, it says apprenticeship on page 777 before verse 23. That's because it says here from 25 years of age and up, you shall join the legion. Whereas when the Levium were designated in Parshas Bamidbar, I believe. So there it says that it was from 30 years of age. They were counted from 8 days, but when they were counted for who would actually be doing the service, it was from 30 years of age and up. So so the 25, I say Rashi quotes, 25 is it was like an apprentice, a 5-year apprenticeship period where they would study the laws and learn how to do it, and from 30 was when they would actually be doing the work. Okay, next in chapter 9 on page 779, we have the mitzvah of the Korban Pesach, the Pesach offering in the wilderness. Hashem spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai in the 2nd year from their exodus from the land of Egypt in the 1st month, saying, the children of Israel shall make the Pesach offering in its appointed time. On the 14th day of this month in the afternoon you shall make it. You bring the offering. According to all its decrees and the laws, you shall make it. The Ramban said that we needed this mitzvah because in previously, and when we were commanded to do the Pesach offering when we were in Egypt, so there were 2 components to that commandment. There was the mitzvah to bring the Pesach offering in Egypt. That was that night that we were taken out of Egypt. We had that mitzvah to bring the Pesach offering, and that was done differently. That's when we had the mitzvah to spread the blood on the doorposts and the lintel. That was just in Egypt. And then there was the mitzvah for all generations to bring the Pesach offering. But there, that mitzvah was prefaced with when you enter the land that Hashem your God gave to you. That mitzvah was only after we entered the land of Israel. But we never had the mitzvah in between those 2 periods. We never had the mitzvah to bring the Pesach offering after we left Egypt and before we entered the land, and that's what we're commanded for now. And he said the reason why then it says when you enter the land, it's because it depends on having a tabernacle or the temple. But once we're exiled from the land, then we can't bring the Pesach offering anymore. What's that? Oh, yeah.
One day, wow. 22.
Yeah, it was like I say that it was completely miraculous. That it wasn't a natural. Yeah. So if you look in the note on verse 13, there's on page 777. The note says Vayikra Rabbi comments on the prodigious strength and stamina that were needed for Moshe and Aaron to live bodily 22,000 Levites in a single day, and that's beside. And they say this the strength and stamina because a miracle only happens when we when we put in our best efforts. That there's no miracle if we just sit back and okay, you take care of it. I'm not going to do anything. Okay, you're saying you put your best effort? Oh, good. Okay, good. So there's a famous saying of our sages that if a person says, there's a famous saying of our sages that if a person says Yagati v'loy matzasi, that I like put in all my effort and I didn't find, that don't believe him. But if he says Yagati matzasi, that I put in all my efforts and I found, then you believe him. And this is referring to the Torah. But the commentaries comment that it doesn't say like I put in my effort and I was successful. It says I put in my effort and I found. That when you find something, usually it's not the result of, it's not like it's not the result of your efforts. It's that it happened to be where you looked. You found it. Not that like I built it, I succeeded. So and that's what our sages are saying, that ultimately we do all the work, but what we end up with is what we found, not what we built. Is that we do the work and Hashem gives us what's coming to us. That it's, in the end of the day, it's a miracle what we have. Okay, so now moving on. Where are we? So they did the Korban Pesach. In verse 6 on page 779. There were men who had been contaminated by a human corpse and could not make the Pesach offering on that day. And they were contaminated by a human corpse, and that's a problem because we will see in Parshas Chukas the process for becoming pure was from contamination by a dead person is a 7-day process. That it's the sprinkling with the blood of the red cow on the 3rd day, and the 6th day it's what? Yeah, it's a process to become pure. And these people were not able to be would not have been pure in time to bring the Pesach offering. And they said to Moshe, we are contaminated through a human corpse. Why should we be diminished by not offering Hashem's offering in its appointed time among the children of Israel? So instead of saying that, oh goody, it's not my fault. I'm exempt from the mitzvah, so I could sit back and relax while everyone else is working and running around with like a chicken without their head. I'm exempt by no fault of my own. I don't have to do it. They were disturbed by this. They didn't have the opportunity to do a mitzvah. And they came to Moshe and say, why can't we do this mitzvah? And Moshe said to them, stand and I'll hear what Hashem will command you. And on verse 9 on page 781, Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, speak to the children of Israel saying, if any man will become contaminated through a human corpse on a distant road, whether you or your generations, he shall make the Pesach offering from Hashem in the 2nd month on the 14th day in the afternoon. He shall make it with matzahs and bitter herbs. He shall eat it. So this is the mitzvah of Pesach Sheni, the 2nd Pesach, where a month later we have an opportunity to make up if we were unable to bring the Korban Pesach in its proper time. So 1 month later, he brings the offering on the 14th day of Iyar, and then he would eat it with matzahs and mar. He shall not leave over from it until morning, nor shall they break a bone of it, like all the decrees of Pesach offering. They shall make it. You pretty much treat it like a Korban Pesach. But it continues that this is only if they couldn't bring it, but through no fault of their own. But if a person was just too lazy and decided not to bring it, so then they don't have this makeup and they get the punishment for not bringing the Pesach offering. And then continues in verse 14, when a convert shall dwell with you, he shall make the Pesach offering to Hashem, according to the decree of the Pesach offering and its laws, so shall he do. One decree shall be for you, one for the proselyte and the native of the land. So that's very interesting. And there are a lot of comments about what exactly this means. And from what there's really 2 different directions they take that. One is that a person may think that a convert can't bring a Pesach offering, because it says, our sages say that when someone brings a Pesach offering, they're obligated to see themselves as if they left Egypt. And this is like we're re-experiencing the departure from Egypt that our ancestors were a part of. But if this person was converted to Judaism, he wasn't a part of that, meaning his ancestors weren't part of that. So one may think he wouldn't bring the Pesach offering. That's one approach, and so we need a special inclusion of the converts. Another one approach is the opposite, that what was the Pesach offering representing? The Pesach offering was representing our breaking from the Egyptians and becoming a separate nation from them. That they worship the lamb, the sheep, especially in that month of Nisan, which has the zodiac sign of Aries, the ram, and they would worship the sheep then, and we're taking it and slaughtering and eating it. That was a disavowal of the idolatry and culture of the nation that we're a part of, and a statement that we are, and that made us into a separate nation. So when someone's converting to Judaism, essentially that's what they're doing, that they're leaving behind their old nation and culture and joining ours. So one may think that they should bring a Korban Pesach immediately, that when a person converts to Judaism, they should bring a Korban Pesach because they're experiencing what we experienced when we departed from Egypt. And that's what the Torah is saying, that in verse 14, when a convert, he shall make a Pesach offering to Hashem according to the decree of the Pesach offering and its law. So shall he do. One decree shall be for you. You all bring it in the same time. He doesn't bring one right when he converts to Judaism. Okay, it continues in verse 15, on the day the tabernacle was set up, the cloud covered the tabernacle, etc. That when they would set it up, the cloud would cover it, and then the cloud would depart, and that would be a signal that it was time to leave. Then, and they would follow the cloud, and wherever it went, if it stopped, they would encamp, and they would just follow it wherever it went. In verse 18, according to the word of Hashem, with the children of Israel journey, according to the word of Hashem, with they encamp. We wandered in the desert for 40 years, not because we were lost, but because we were following the commands of Hashem. All the days that the cloud would rest upon the tabernacle, they would encamp. When the cloud lingered upon the tabernacle, many days the children of Israel would maintain the charge of Hashem, would not journey. They would stay there a number of days for years. And saying in verse 21, and sometimes the cloud would remain from evening until morning. It would stop. They would spend the night there. They would, they would encamp. Then the next morning, the cloud would be moving again. They would decamp. They never knew how long they would be there. It was a very tenuous existence. They never knew if they were going to, what? Yeah, they would stop for the night. They don't know. Are we going to be here for 10 years, or are we going to be here? Are we going to leave tomorrow? Are we going to leave in a week? They never knew if they should unpack. Yeah. Or it was an act of faith, and it was a demonstration of, it was a training of faith that we follow what Hashem tells us to do, no matter how we're feeling. Okay, so the Baal Term though comments here on verse 15 that in this parsha, in this little section, it says the word tabernacle 7 times, and that's and he says that's a remez, that's a reference to the 7 tabernacles that we'd have in our history. And if I believe what they are without having looked, but I believe he's referring to the tabernacle we had in the desert, the tabernacle we had in Gilgal when we first entered the land of Israel, the tabernacle in Shiloh, that's 3, the tabernacle in Nov, following the destruction of Shiloh, that's 4, and then the first temple, the second temple, and the third temple may be built speedily in our days. And that's hinted to at the 7 times it says tabernacle in this section.
Tabernacle also says like a fiery appearance. So
yes. So it talks about the cloud. So there would be so the cloud would be by day, and there was like a fire that was before them at night, to light the way. So that would stop over there at night. Yes. Okay, so now in chapter 10 on page 783, we discuss how they would signal what they were doing. They had a whole camp of hundreds of millions of people, so 600,000 men from 20 to 20 and up, which is a lot, millions total. So how would they know what to do? So in chapter 10, Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, "Make for yourself 2 silver trumpets, make them hammered out, and they shall be for yours for the summoning of the assembly, and to cause the camp to journey. When they sound a long blast with them, the entire assembly shall assemble to you. If they sound a long blast with one, the leaders shall assemble with use of their 2 trumpets. So if just one blows, then it's just the leaders. But if it's 2, then everybody comes. When you sound short blast, the camp resting to the east shall journey. When you sound short blast the second time, the camp resting to the south shall journey." So they had a system of signals with the trumpets, similar to how in the army they would have bugle and drum. They would have these bugles and drums to signal where, I can still hear it. You hear the bugles. Yeah, you hear I don't hear it recently I haven't. Either I'm immune to it, I don't know, but you hear, what do they call it? There's a revelry, right? That you hear like curfew at like 11. Yeah. Well, at funerals, but like 11, the bugle goes, it's time for bed, I guess. And in the morning at like 6:30, is it 6:30? There's like a cannon, there's like a boom, a cannon, and then you hear the wake up. Yeah. So and this was, they used to do this in war. That, yes.
My night shift gamble, I would get up around that time, and I would do that ceremony at
Oh yeah, this is what I'm talking about. So I live pretty close to Hyundai. I could hear that at night. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. So it continues in verse 9. When you go out to wage war in your land against an enemy who oppresses you, you shall sound short blasts of the trumpet. You shall be recalled before Hashem your God. You shall be saved from your foes. On the day of your gladness and on your festivals, on your new moons, these are the festivals and holidays, you shall sound the trumpets over your elevation offerings, over your feast offerings. They shall be a remembrance for you before Hashem your God. I am Hashem. that we'd blow the trumpets and the shofars. Okay, and then it continues that and now we're gonna break camp for the first time, leaving Mount Sinai. This is like a pivotal moment in our history that we were at Mount Sinai for I think it was close to a year. And we finally had left Mount Sinai and continued on our moved on in life following receiving the Torah. In verse 11, it was in the second year, in the second month, on the 20th of the month, the cloud was lifted from upon the tabernacle of the testimony. The children of Israel journeyed on their journeys in the wilderness of Sinai, and the cloud rested in the wilderness of Paran. And they journeyed the first time at the bidding of Hashem through Moshe, and then it describes the order of how they traveled. That we saw how they were encamped, now it's the order how they traveled. The banner of the camp of the children of Yehuda journeyed forth, led by Nachshon, along with Yisachar and Zevulun. Then with the tabernacle, with Gershon and with the sons of Gershon and Merari. Then Ruvain, along with Shimon and Gad. Then Ephraim, along with Manasseh and Benjamin. And then Dan, who was the rear guard, along with Asher and Naphtali and their leaders. Then in verse 29, it says, Moshe, on the bottom of page 785, Moshe said to Choviv, son of Reuel, the Midianite, the father-in-law of Moshe. Remember, he's been called Yisro up until now. The Ramban said that the custom is when someone joins the Jewish people, they take on a new name. And the Ramban says this was the name he chose. Choviv means love. It's that he joined the Jewish people, he loved the Torah. So he told him, we are journeying to the place of which Hashem had said, I shall give to you. Go with us. Moshe said to him, we'll treat you well, for Hashem has spoken good for Israel. What does this mean, we will treat you well? So the Medrash says that this is saying that Moshe was telling him that he would have a portion in the land of Israel. Because remember, the land of Israel was divided up according to the amongst the tribes of Israel. Each tribe got a portion, and each family within the tribe got a sub-portion, and each person within the family got a portion of that. But Yisro was not part of a tribe. He was a convert, and so he wouldn't have his own, heritage, his own ancestral portion in the land of Israel. Moshe said, you'll get one that will treat you well, meaning you would get a portion in the land of Israel. And in fact, our sages say that the family of Yisro was given the area around Yericho, around Jericho, was given to the family of Yisro. It continues, he said to him, I shall not go, only to my land, to my family I shall go. He'll go to his family. And then Moshe said to him on page 787, please do not forsake us, and as much as you know our encampments in the wilderness, and you have been as eyes for us, you advised us well. And it shall be that if you come with us, then with the goodness which Hashem will benefit us, we'll do good to you. Once again, we'll give you a portion in the land of Israel. And it doesn't say the result if he actually came. And the Ramban says that he actually remained with the Jewish people. But the Sforno said that he went back and just his children remained. Okay. And you find that his family comes up in the prophets every once in a while. You find the Canaanite, the son and father-in-law of Moshe, that his descendants come up as a lot of times, like when they're doing battle, that they warn the Canaanites first that they should clear the area so they don't get caught up in the fighting. Okay, so now in verse 33 on page 77, they journeyed from the mountain of Hashem a 3-day distance. And the Ark of the Covenant of Hashem journeyed before them a 3 days distance to search out for them a resting place. And the cloud of Hashem was over them by day, etc. Now we have in verse 35, when the ark would journey, Hashem said, arise, Hashem. Moshe said, arise, Hashem, let your foes be scattered. Let those who hate you flee from before you. Who are those who hate Hashem? So our sages say those are the people who hate the Jewish people. That those who hate the Jewish people, who are the people of Hashem, that is a reflection of hatred of Hashem. And in verse 36, and when it rested, he would say, reside tranquilly, O Hashem, among the myriad thousands of Israel. This should look familiar. This is what we sing when we bring out the Torah. We say, Vayhi b'tzo Aharon, Vayomer Moshe Kuma, Hashem, v'yafutzu oivecha. That comes from here. Yeah. And when we're returning the Torah, that's when we say, Uvnucha yom arshuva Hashem rivas alch v'esal. Yeah. Right before Eitz Chaim, exactly. Okay, so now in chapter 11, the bottom of page 787, it states, the people took to seeking complaints. And here, if you look at the word in the Hebrew, it's the people is ha'am. And the commentaries say that when it's referring, Rashi says ha'am, the people, as refers to Bnei Yisrael, the Israelites, that's usually the wicked people. The people is the rabble. And they took to seeking complaints. The sages said that we were now leaving settled areas. We were leaving Mount Sinai, which is a settled area where we had settled for a long time, a year. And now we're going into the deep desert. So they were saying, they were like, well, we'll be uncomfortable. Where will we get food? Where will we get water? And they weren't even uncomfortable yet. They were worried about the future. How what are we going to do? And that's that they were seeking complaints, not that they actually had anything to complain about at the moment. It was evil in the ears of Hashem, and Hashem heard it, and his wrath flared, and the fire of Hashem burned against them and consumed at the edge of the camp. And the people cried out to Moshe. Moshe prayed to Hashem. The fire died down. He named that place Tavera, for the fire of Hashem had burned against them. Now on page 789, there was dissatisfaction with the man. In verse 4, the rabble that was among them cultivated a craving. What does that mean, they cultivated a craving? That it wasn't that they had anything to... It wasn't they were hungry, and they didn't actually... They wanted to desire something. And the commentaries say, actually, that at this point, they were eating man. Let's continue, actually, to see their complaint. And the children of Israel also wept once more and said, who will feed us meat? We remember the fish that we ate in Egypt free of charge, and the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. They ate them free of charge. The Egyptians would feed their slaves so they would be able to work. But now our life is parched. There's nothing. We have nothing to anticipate what the manna. And then it says, describes the man. So what is that? So what are they complaining about? They had the manna to eat. So sages say that the man was a purely spiritual food, and it was completely satisfying, but it didn't like satisfy craving. It made someone not hungry anymore. It was like getting injected with. It was almost like eating man was almost like being fed through an IV. That you get all the nutrients you need, and a perfect IV, where you get all the nutrients you need, so you never need to eat. Which in a sense for people would seem like the perfect solution. You don't need to waste time with meals, and you don't need to worry about, but people want that feeling of heaviness, of having eaten they even had taste of them on a great taste, but they didn't have that feeling of satisfaction of eating a great meal. They just had it. It was like being injected into their veins because it was a perfect spiritual food. And that's what they were bothered. That's what it means. They cultivated a craving, that they wanted that craving and they didn't have it. Okay. Exactly. Exactly. They had the taste and they had the nutrition, but they didn't have the feeling of substance. So Moshe heard the people weeping in their family groups, each one at the entrance of his tent, and the wrath of Hashem flared greatly, and the eyes of Moshe was bad. And Moshe said to Hashem, why have you done evil to your servant? Why have I not found favor in your eyes that you placed the burden of this entire people upon me? Did I conceive this entire people, or did I give birth to it, that you say carry them in their bosom as a nurse carries a suckling to the land that you swore to their forefathers? Where shall I get meat to give this entire people when they weep to me, saying, give us meat that we may eat? So I alone cannot carry this entire nation, for it is too heavy for me. So all the commentaries are bothered by this. And Moshe is saying to Hashem, like, where am I going to get meat from? Is he doubting that Hashem could supply meat as much as he's supplying the man? He's saying like they're being fed miraculously anyway. Why is he doubting that Hashem would be able to supply meat? So I don't remember where I saw this, but I saw brought down that what Moshe's thinking is that the people are sustained in the merit of their leader. and that the leader of the Jewish people is the one who brings the shefa, the spiritual source of sustenance for the people. And he said Moshe was pure spiritual at this point, that he had spent 40 days and 40 nights on Mount Sinai learning the Torah from Hashem, but then he didn't eat, he didn't drink. He was at this point pretty much an angel, that he had no physical aspect to him pretty much. And so the food that Moshe was able to bring down for the Jewish people was purely spiritual. So that's what he was saying is, what could I do? He's saying, I can connect to the people. The people are these physical beings, and they're desiring these physical substance to eat, but I'm so spiritual that I can't connect to that and can't bring that for them. So what could I do? And to that Hashem answered in verse 16, Hashem said to Moshe, gather to me 70 men from the elders of Israel, whom you know to be elders of the people as officers. I'll dispense and speak to you there. I'll increase some of the spirit that is upon you, place it on them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, and you shall not bear alone. Meaning that leading along with you will be 70 people who are great men, but not on your spiritual stature, who will be able to, once again, bring this take care of the people's physical needs. And in verse 18, to the people, you shall say, prepare yourself for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat, for you have wept in the ears of Hashem, saying, who'll feed us meat? And in verse 19, not for 1 day shall you eat, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, nor 10 days, nor 20 days, until an entire month of days, until it comes out of your nose and becomes nauseating to you, because you have rejected Hashem who is in your midst, and you have wept before him, saying, why did we leave Egypt? So the Kli Yakar says an additional answer to that question of why was Moshe saying, how could I supply it? Did he think Hashem can't supply it? And what exactly this answer is. So the Kli Yakar understands that what Moshe was saying is not that Hashem can't supply whatever Hashem wants to supply, but the problem was Moshe understood how physical desire works, looking from the outside once again, is that a person's never satisfied. And if a person has, the expression is, if a person has 100, he wants 200. And there's never, what Moshe was saying is, how could we give what the people want? It'll never be enough. Whatever they have, they'll want more. And to that's why Hashem was saying that not for 1 day you'll have so much until you're coming out of your nose and you'll be nauseous from all the meat. Yes, there will come a point where it's such an overdose where they'll be overwhelmed by what they have, and they'll regret it. Once again, that you can have so much that you regret that it's damaging, and you recognize it's damaging. And that's where in 793 Moshe said, 600,000 footmen are the people in the midst I am, yet I shall give them meat, and they shall eat for a month of days. Can sheep or cattle be slaughtered for them? And he understood that this would be coming through him, and he was saying, I can't supply that. And Hashem said to Moshe, is the hand of Hashem limited? Now you will see whether my word will come to pass or not. He was saying, in spite of you being the leader, this will be what the people will have. And there were new, and so you got these 78 elders got the spirit of Hashem. They were granted prophecy, and they prophesied. And then in verse 26, 2 men remained behind in the camp. The one was Eldad, and the name of the second was Medad. And the spirit rested upon them. They had been among the recorded ones, but they had not gone out to the tent, meaning that there was a question as to, okay, so, what does this mean they were among the recorded ones, but they did not go out to the camp? So remember, there are 12 tribes among the children of Israel. 70 divided by 12 is, help me with the math, please. 70 divided by 12, because there were going to be 70 elders.
5.8
equals, what's that?
5.83.
5.83, which means that 5 times, thank you. So 5 times 12 is 60. So I'm somewhere off with the math. So 70, oh yeah. So it's 60. So if you have 70, that means, what's the remainder? You have a remainder of 2. I mean, if each tribe, let's say, gets an even amount of leaders. So you have 5 from each tribe gets you to 60, and then you have 10 left, which means that only 10 of the tribes could have leaders come from them, and there's 2 tribes do not have a sixth of the a sixth of the Zakanim, a sixth of the elders. Do not have do not have that last one, which would seem to penalize a tribe, that they're less significant. So the way they did it is they did it by lot. They did it by lottery, or that was what they were going to do, was do it by lottery. That they had 72 actually come, 6 from each tribe, and there were 2 that were going to be not one of the leaders, not one of these elders. But these two of the recorded ones, 2 of the people who were chosen to do it were Eldad and Medad, and they didn't come out of their humility. They didn't feel that they were they were appropriate, that they were humble, and they didn't go. Yet still, as it continues, 2 remained by the. They had been among their recorded ones, but had not gone out to the tent, and they prophesied in the camp. Even from their humility, they didn't join that group, but they were granted prophecy anyway. And the youths ran and told Moshe, and he said, Eldad made a prophesizing in the camp. Yeshua, son of Nun, the servant of Moshe, since his youth spoke up and said, my Lord Moshe, incarcerate them. And Moshe said to him, are you being zealous for my sake? Would that the entire people Hashem could be prophets? Hashem would place the Spirit upon them. And Moshe showed his humility, is that he wasn't begrudging other people getting prophecy. He was the prophet. But when other people got prophecy as well, he just said, I wish all of the Jews could experience this. And okay, well, what was this about? Why was Yeshua angry at them? So our sages say that their prophecy was, they were going around prophesying that Moshe is going to die before we enter the land and Yeshua will take over. And Yeshua didn't want to hear that. Okay, so now in verse 30, Moshe was brought into the camp, and the wind went forth from Hashem, blew quail from the sea, and spread them over the camp, a day's journey this way and a day's journey that way, all around the camp, and 2 cubits above the face of the earth. The people rose up all that day, all that night, the next day, and gathered up the quail. The one with the least gathered in 10 chomers. That's an amount, and they spread them all around the camp. The meat was still between their teeth, not yet chewed, when the wrath of Hashem flared against the people, and Hashem struck a mighty blow against the people who complained. He named that place Kivros Hataiva, the burial from of their physical desires, because there they buried the people who had been craven. Okay, and from Kivros Hataiva, the people journeyed to Chatzeres, and they remained in Chatzeres. Just as an aside, there was a question about quail, if quail is kosher. And obviously from here you see it is. Slav, this quail that they had in the desert, this was after the Torah was given, they would only eat kosher meat. But there are different species of quail and there's actually an American quail that's completely unrelated to the other quail. So, and this is very relevant because, like, obviously if you're eating meat, you just make sure it has a hechsher and you're good. Like the kashrus agency has to make sure that the quail is kosher. But quail, apparently raising quail, like people raise chickens in their backyard. My wife has a friend who has quail in their backyard in Israel. And the quail eggs are supposed to be like very healthy and very supposed to be very good. You sell quail eggs? Right, and it's something that's supposed to be not difficult to raise to raise quail if you a quail in the backyard, and you get plenty of eggs, quail eggs. So if a person would like to do that, they have to check with a rabbi / kashrus expert to ensure that they're getting the correct kind of quail. I think there's like rock quail or something that's actually not kosher. And then there's another kind that they say is the quail that was in the desert. Okay, anyway, yeah, I'll research that later. So now, in chapter 12, page 795, Moshe's uniqueness is challenged and affirmed. Miriam and Aaron spoke about Moshe regarding the Cushite woman who had married, for he had married a Cushite woman. They said, was it only to Moshe that Hashem spoke? Did he not speak to us as well? And Hashem heard. Now the man Moshe was exceedingly humble, more than any person on the face of the earth. So, what was going on here? So, they were criticizing Moshe because Miriam learned from Tzipporah, Moshe's wife, that Moshe had separated from his wife. Why did Moshe separate from his wife? It's because that when a person engages in marital relations, so it brings a certain level of ritual impurity that they would need to go to the mikveh before doing, before going in the Beis HaMikdash, let's say, before going in the temple. So Moshe, because he would have prophecies at any moment, Hashem would speak to him, so he separated from his wife. Miriam had learned that, and she was disturbed and said, like, don't we have prophecy too? Like it says here, that what is it to only to Moshe and to Moshe that Hashem spoke, did not speak to us as well, that Miriam was a prophetess, Aaron was a prophet. So he's saying, do we also have to separate from our spouses, because we have prophecy? So and it says that Moshe was so humble that this wasn't something that would affect him. Meaning, Moshe was so humble, he wouldn't be disturbed by them speaking and being concerned for his wife, for Tzipporah. But Hashem, in verse 4, Hashem said suddenly to Moshe and Aaron and to Miriam, you three go out of the tent of meeting. And the three of them went out, and Hashem descended into the pillar of clouds, took at the entrance of the tent, summoned Aaron and Miriam. The two of them went out. He said, hear now my words. If there shall be prophets among you in a vision, so shall I, Hashem, make myself known to him. In a dream shall I speak to him. He's saying normal prophets, all other prophets, they have an indirect prophet. They have a vision. They have a dream. There's some level of interpretation that they have to make. It's unclear. It's like they're seeing the prophecy through frosted glass. That it's unclear exactly. Like we saw that prophecy in Zechariah, that he had a vision of this olive tree filling up the menorah. He saw a menorah being filled by olive trees at the side, and that was a vision that sent a message to him. And at that point, he didn't understand it, and an angel interpreted for him. But he's saying in verse 7, not so is my servant Moshe. Moshe is different. And in my entire house, he is the trusted one. He's like a trusted servant that has the run of the house, goes anywhere, talks to anyone. Mouth to mouth do I speak to him in a clear vision and not in riddles. It's not subject to interpretation. It's like one person speaking to another. At the image of Hashem does he gaze. Why did you not fear to speak against my servant Moshe? So he's saying you don't compare yourself to Moshe. What any other prophet experiences is nothing like what Moshe experiences. And it says that Hashem appeared suddenly to them, also to make a statement that this is what Moshe deals with. That I come at any moment, and he has to be pure. And that was and Miriam not being pure at that moment was like the Shekhinah appeared, and they were searching for water to dip in a mikvah. And that was a message that like this is Moshe can't be impure at any given moment. The wrath of Hashem flared against him, and he left. In verse 10, the cloud had departed from atop the tent, and behold, Miriam was afflicted with saras, the spiritual skin disease, like snow. Aaron turned to Miriam, behold, she was afflicted with saras. So you say that's a punishment for speaking ill of others. Aaron said to Moshe, I beg you, my Lord, do not cast a sin upon us, for we have been foolish and we have sinned. Let her not be like a corpse, like one who leaves his mother's womb with half his flesh having been consumed. And Moshe cried to Hashem, saying, please, Hashem, heal her now. Hashem says to Moshe, were his father to spit in her face, would she not be humiliated for 7 days? Let her be quarantined outside the camp for 7 days, and then she may be brought in. So she had to quarantine for 7 days for having spoken against Moshe. So Miriam was quarantined outside the camp for 7 days, and the people did not journey until Miriam was brought in, and that was at the same time as her humiliation that she got saras, but it was a great honor that the entire Jewish people waited for her to in order to journey. Yeah, so when I was in yeshiva in Scranton, so we had it's not the biggest city, and it was a very small airport. And there was one time that I was not exactly late, but I was like, time was tight getting through security. And they gave me whatever, they were giving me trouble. They were going through all my stuff, and they gave me full search and everything. Yeah, dark and had like a shadow, and it was a short time after 9/11. And afterwards, they told me, hurry up, there's a whole plane waiting for you. So the big joke in Scranton always was that we had a lot of times we flew these like small planes, small propeller planes where you have to walk out on the taxiway and climb the stairs to get in. And the joke always was that they needed every person to pedal. So they had to wait for you.
Said,
Rabbi list.
Yeah, 1 second. Fred had a question.
Okay.
You. Okay, Fred wants to defer to you. So, Dr. Finn, what's your question?
Why wasn't Aaron afflicted as well with Miriam?
It seems that Miriam was the one who was doing the speaking, and it sounds like it was a comment that Zipporah made, and she was talking to Miriam. So Zipporah had made such a comment that made Miriam understand that they were separate. They were separated, and Miriam shared the news with. She spoke about it with Aaron. So since she was the one who spoke about it, even though it was wrong to listen and and as well, but the speaking is the more serious factor. So she was the one who was punished.
Yeah, because he
Oh, yeah.
sounds complicit in the.
Yes, and they were
never
as you
said
said,
anything to her not to talk like that.
right. He summoned Aaron and Miriam, so they were both summoned and they were both criticized. But since Miriam was the one who actually spoke the Lashon Hara, so she was the one who was punished. Yes, Fred?
you said earlier that they sprinkled the blood and pepper.
Not the blood, the ashes. If I said the blood, it was a mistake. Okay, I misspoke.
I'm just thinking
Yeah, okay.
they burnt the animal and they had some liquid too and ashes. You said blood.
Right, okay, so there's a third thing. No. So no blood. They burnt the animal, took the ashes, mixed them with water, and they'd sprinkle.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. I'm sorry. So and so the Parsha ends that the people waited for her, which is a great honor. And then the people journeyed from Chatzeres, they encamped in the wilderness of. Okay, shkoyach, everybody have a great Shabbos.